This is not a show. It might not even be a connection. Here's Judah and guest.
And
or just go live.
It's live. We're doing it live. It's not a show. And I'm here with one of my oldest friends. People have seen me talk a lot with Ford Suze, but my relationship, my discussions with Josh Blackburn go way, way back. And man, we've been in so many like arguments and discussions and like, some of the like, I repeat a lot of the things I was telling you earlier. Some of the things you said, I repeat a lot. I repeat, it's good for the soul. And also, right now, we're enjoying a little bit of the old world and a little bit of the new world as we drink and smoke.
That's true.
I repeat,
tobacco and whiskey.
I repeat that all the time. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Just living it live in Bristol, Tennessee.
Man. So how is, I don't know how much you want to talk about or how much, I want to talk a little bit more about politics that are bothering me, but I mean, COVID is on everybody's mind. How are you dealing with that? Is everything, how is it okay with you? And I know you're like a director of a mental health facility and stuff. So
Yeah, it's it's not really impacted me too much, other than shifts in at work. But at the same time, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a flexible guy. The older I've gotten, the more I'm like, man, let's just go with the flow.
yeah.
Like let's be honest and just admit that most days we're just making it up. So this is just another situation where we're just trying to make it up.
Yeah, but that's what I respect about you. You've never really been like anybody to be real driven by any particular dogma or ideology.
No, I've never.
I mean, like in one particular camp, you've always sort of wanted to be a little outside of either camp.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a. Yeah, I do like to try to make peace, I suppose. I'm a little erratic, or I try to be. Yeah, but no, I mean, like everyone's staying at home, and we're social distancing, and the last couple of weeks have just been getting all the therapists, be able to work online, so they can. It's just flexing with the circumstances.
I mean, it is sort of, it's wonderful that nowadays I've been able to, with some of my clients that I don't think they're as comfortable with meeting face to face, although I would be okay with it. And maybe I shouldn't be, maybe I should be a little bit more social distancing, but I feel like it's really important for them to have social contact, still meet and stuff like that. It's been great to just get on like this and be like, hey, let's do a podcast. Let's do your own podcast, or let's just talk. Let's just check in. Let's do personal stuff without any broadcasting or anything. Let's just talk, and it feels more. It feels better than a phone call.
Yes, this is definitely better than a phone call. And I'm pretty bad about the phone anymore.
Dude, nobody's as bad as me. I think I still have on. Like it's a message on, I think it's on LinkedIn from you. It says, call anytime. And I said, okay, I'll call in a little bit. And that was like, I think that was 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
It just makes me wonder.
I just called like 2 days ago. So that's how long it took.
But I mean, you're... We're here, and that's all that matters.
That's true.
Though I do wonder how long that's been.
Okay, so Dora was born, my second born. So Annalise was 2. She's 12 now. It was 10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years ago, I said, I'll call you in a minute.
I'll call you one day.
Or something like that. I'll call you soon. Well, so Josh, I thought about you recently, and that's why I called you up. One reason, because I might be moving out that way. The other reason is because you always have a level head when it comes to politics and stuff like that. Maybe just with me, because I tend to be a little bit like a push the envelope. And even though with other people you might push the envelope, with me you tend to sort of like, let's think about that, you know? So lately I've been getting really frustrated with like people accusing me of being like too far on the right. But then I feel like the nation is just really subdivided. You mentioned earlier before we got on about like what did you call it? A powder keg?
Powder keg.
It feels like a powder keg. I feel like there's certain people I just can't talk to. They just make me so mad.
Well, yeah, they make you mad and they get mad. I mean,
Yeah.
this is how I know it's powder keg.
Okay.
When you have a violent left.
A violent left. Ooh. What do you mean by that?
Well, Antifa and those kinds of movements, right?
Yeah.
The people on the right have to just kind of own up to the fact that the right is not afraid to use violence.
That's true.
Never has.
That's true.
But when the left, when the flower children are willing to whip somebody's behind, that's a powder keg. Because now you got like, you want to do and it just escalates, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think of a powder keg. And then the civil discourse in this country, we don't know how to do civil discourse anymore. And I'm not sure if that's just part of the medium, right?
Because of like social media and stuff?
Well, I mean, think about Twitter. You know, if you have 140, if you have 144 characters to explain a complicated subject, it doesn't allow for discourse. Like,
it doesn't allow for nuance, right?
No nuance. Clickbait, and it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
Not a lot of room for subtleties.
Yeah. You said something when we were on the phone the other day that really was interesting to me, because it's something I struggle with. It's like being in the helping field, and yet also being as part of your Eastern Orthodox, right?
Yep.
And I mentioned, I think that I don't think you can get as unprogressive as Eastern Orthodox, right? It's like unchanging.
We're about as unprogressive as you get. In some respects. I mean, it's an interesting field to be an Orthodox Christian on the one hand, with a solid foot in the mental health and helping professions that are very progressively charged, not just from a political but an ideological perspective. And it's what's really funny is when I'll encounter, like, I've got a couple that work for me that are, believe it or not, conservative licensed clinical social workers.
Get out.
No, for real.
You're talking about a unicorn over there.
I've got two. And
actually, I'm not licensed, so yeah.
But they're fun because they're great to talk to on a personal level, but even they recognize that it's a subtle professional practice basically to give yourself to your client and to really be there solely for the client, but yet to maintain your own personal beliefs at the same time, to be able to bracket, I think is the technical term, but I don't even like bracketing. It's just
maybe
it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. It is.
But part of that's like how much you disclose to the client. So like, I've got one clinician here in East Tennessee. I'll broaden it out a little bit. Who's not from here, and that particular clinician draws a lot of like transplants because they want a clinician that's not from Tennessee. And but then a lot of they might be complaining about Trump, or there's all kinds of trauma that happens to, or small t, trauma that occurs, due to political incidences. And, and meanwhile, they're sitting back going, well, it's meeting people where they are
Yeah.
is really what it comes down to. Um,
Well,
challenge.
I think I feel like I've been able to transfer that because I feel like I do really well with that in the as a clinician with my clients. But then I feel like it's hard. It has been hard to transfer that over to, well, definitely social media
Yeah.
and everyday life. Even like, I think I did really well about that for years. I was in a profession. I was a counselor, working in CPS, working with people that really hated conservatives, and it was really hard for me to be honest. I still find it hard to be honest with them about my conservatism because I feel like, but I feel like I did do a very good job of integrating, my real self with the person that would interact with my fellow liberal friends,
Yeah.
and I loved them, and I knew they loved me, but I wondered if they would love me as much if they realized how conservative I really was.
If they really knew I was a monarchist.
You're a monarchist?
Well, of course I am. I'm Orthodox.
That's right.
But what does a monarchist do living in America? Nothing. Yeah.
And so have you, I guess living in Tennessee, you haven't had too much problem finding, like, integrating that sort of, what do you call that? When you just keep yourself neutral, into relationships?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure about neutrality necessarily as it is any more. The older I get, the more I have a deeper appreciation for wonder and curiosity as being the cure for getting bent out of shape. um, because people believe things for a reason.
Yeah.
And oftentimes those reasons are deeply emotional and not necessarily cognitive. But the difficult thing is that the only way we really kind of meet one another is in dialogue.
Yeah.
Which means I've got to just kind of keep an open mind and be curious and wonder, well, what is it about my neighbor or my friend that's something that's an important belief to them? What led them to believe that? And that does require a little bit of humility on my part because it opens up the door just even a crack that maybe I haven't gotten it all figured out.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm not sure if to me, it's not so much neutrality as more of an active listening stance where, if someone brings it up, it's like, and I tell this to my kids all the time here lately, because they're getting to that age where at least my older two girls often respond with a defensive response to anything I say or that their mother says. And I just have to stop and go, hold on for a minute. Like if we're taking time to say something to you, do you ever wonder why we do that? Like even, like maybe, just maybe you could be wrong, or at least at a minimum, like instead of getting defensive, like what would happen if you asked a question?
Yeah.
Why are you asking me that? Why are you telling me that? Like, what is it that's important to you?
Yeah.
That would make you pause and spend time talking with me about this. I don't know. Then I just love Mr. Rogers, man. Mr. Rogers. No.
What? You love Mr. Rogers, huh?
I love me some Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked him from a distance. This is the second time you mentioned him to me. So what's going on with you and the Mr. Rogers thing?
I don't know, man. There's just something. There's something amazing about, and part of it was reading a biography of his, and then some other op-eds that came out when Mr. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood came out.
Mhm.
Um, the man was not a saint, but there was a deep authenticity and intensity to the man.
Almost like the other Rogers.
Kind of, yes. Kind of like the other Rogers, like Carl Rogers, but I'm more of a Fred Rogers fan.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Um,
Huh. I, dude, that would make a great like psychological approach, the Fred Rogers approach, like using play, therapy,
oh
using
man.
storytelling
Yes.
and deep, like positive regard all the way through.
All the way through. Like I
Yeah.
accept you as you are.
Yeah.
Like um and what but he could stop and just put himself in a child's world.
Yeah.
There's this great little snippet of the biography I read where he was invited on the Oprah show, and his handlers had told Oprah, "Do not bring children on this show, because what Fred will do is he will just simply focus on the kids," which apparently is what he did.
Interesting.
He just stops and gets in their world, and that was just his passion. But I think he also did that with adults too.
Yeah.
Um,
But he had a certain, I feel like he had a certain ministry, a certain calling
he believed that his
kids.
vocation. Yes.
to children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting.
But to me, it's just his style and this depth of authenticity.
Mm.
Even with his own foibles and just, I mean, he was a bit of a perfectionist apparently, and I think early on, even can be temperamental.
Yeah.
However,
Wait, he was temperamental? What do you mean?
apparently he could have a little bit of a temper.
Really?
Yes.
So he was was he in the Navy or something? Or no?
No.
That was like a myth, right? He wasn't really in the Navy.
Yeah, I don't think so. He's just a fascinating character to me.
Yeah.
And an approach, basically a way of being a human being is what fascinates me about him, and the way he incorporates play, and I had this conversation with my wife here recently, and it's something that I've given, okay, this is not something I'm reading, but it's something I'm interested in, is the notion of in life allowing ourselves, especially as adults, to play more. Like too often I run into people that take themselves way too seriously. And I know I've been guilty of that. And and if we can move some of the parts of our lives into play, it gives us some room to have new experiences without getting locked down in arbitrary rules. It's my struggle like with language anymore is that it's very easy to create our own cage using words. And the only way to test the reality of that is living. It's the experience.
Well, unpack that for me. What do you mean by like creating? What is that? I can kind of see us. What does that mean to create our own cage with our words? Like how?
Well, I can't do that. My brain just works that way.
So like you say things that you're captured by, you have to stick by them because you uttered those things and you made yourself that? Or is that part of like taking yourself too seriously?
Well, yes. I mean, if I were really woo-woo, which I'm not, I would say something like, limiting beliefs, right? Now you've probably heard this term, like you don't want to bound yourself by, negative self, limits or, and there's an aspect of that where I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to go that far. There are limits.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we can use language to create boundaries that aren't helpful. Or, especially when we make evaluations of other people. Well, I don't think that they're able to do that. But, if we can turn things into an experiment or turn things into play, well, now we can set those rules aside for a minute and just move the pieces around.
Well, like you said earlier, you get into more curiosity.
It's much more creative.
Yeah.
And what I like about play, this is true. Like I was telling my wife, like when kids play house, like they're learning, but they're not doing it with some set goal in mind. Um, and the other way another way to get kind of out of that normal like rule driven way of thinking is in my mind and I've told this to clients, is like, well, how about we just turn this into an experiment? You think you can't do or can't, whatever, fill in the blank, whatever the behavior is, give it a try. And what I like about experiments is this: it gives yourself permission to fail. Because the goal of the experiment isn't to succeed. The goal of the experiment is to learn.
Explore.
Yeah. That's it. I can't leave my house. I mean, I see that a lot, like with, OCD clients or, even, different, anything on the spectrum of anxiety disorders. And it's anytime, and even depressive stuff where, well, that's not going to work. Well, it's really easy to say it's never going to get better and that's not going to work, which is just a verbal rule. But experience is what trumps that. But you have to have enough permission to fail, enough permission to try, to restructure the environment to where it feels a little bit more comfortable or at least safe. So I'll throw this one in here. It's kind of fun. Like, and this is, I've confirmed this with lots of clinicians, and that's, there are a lot of women that struggle with anxiety in their 20s and 30s. And oftentimes by their late 30s or 40s, it just lifts. Because just solely by experience.
Interesting.
Now, that's not always the case with everybody, but there's a significant number of people that, anxiety gets so locked up in our ways of thinking.
Well, I've noticed that in my own life, and in both me and my wife, like we were just so anxious when we had our first child. Like I remember literally, I don't know, you probably had a similar experience, but like Annalise we were taking her back from the hospital. I tell this story a lot, but she's in the back seat and her neck is like this. And like, I had to stop every like 10 miles. I was already going super slow and I had to stop every 10 miles and like make sure that she hadn't broke her neck. It's like, I had so much anxiety, but then by the time the twins came along, I was just like throwing them in the back seat. Let's go.
The first one comes along. You're like, should we call the doctor? Should we just take her to the doctor right now? Yeah, and then by the time you get to third or fourth kid, you're like, they're fine.
Yeah.
You hear a thunk. Well, they'll walk it off.
Yeah, and so I think that's a pretty classic example of people just that exposure.
Yep.
Helping to alleviate anxiety. Exploration, though, there's nothing better than. So play as exploration, because it's more than exploration. Play is exploration plus fun, right?
Yep.
It's like plus goofiness, plus it's even more exploration because you're exploring yourself. You're not like, sometimes I think of exploration as like, like you have a goal in mind, right? Like an explorer is trying to find and conquer or whatever. But play is more than that in the sense that like you said, you can't fail because the goal is just have fun.
It's just to try something new.
Try something new. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like when I think of children and imaginative play, it's just, it unfolds. I mean, it is very much like exploration, like not necessarily with a goal in mind, but I think of like when I go hiking, sometimes I go exploring, where it's like, I don't know where I'm going. I just want to see what's over the top of the next hill or what's down the next holler or what's at the end of the stream. Like, I'm not trying to get from point A to point B. I'm curious. I go back to curiosity and wonder again. I just want to know what's around the bend. Yeah. I just want to see. I just want to experience it.
Do you feel like you're getting more curious and like more into curiosity and wonder the older you get? I mean, obviously you're saying that, but I don't know. I just thought of that for myself. Isn't it weird that the older we get, the more we go back to that as a kid being curious and wonder? Is it
I
because
hope
when we?
so.
Well, yeah, that's true.
When Jesus says you gotta go, you gotta become one of these little people to enter the kingdom. Uh, yeah, I hope so.
I guess it's
Because
true that there's also parts of me that are really calcifying.
yeah,
Like
yes,
I don't want to go out of my house where I used to be extrovert. I'm so much more an introvert. Like shelter and chill or whatever it's called, shelter and
shelter and chill.
that has been like when they told me I had to stay home, I was like, oh no.
Please don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do quick aside here. As somebody who I find it interesting and I try not to be judgmental. And I don't think I'm being judgmental, but I hear parents like complain about staying home with their kids, and like somebody who's like a homeschooler and wish I could stay. I love staying home with my kids, like and to a fault. I think Chan and I don't go on dates enough. We don't get out on our own enough because we just really enjoy being with. We don't go to sleep or we don't get our kids to sleep enough because we enjoy playing with them and being with them and doing stuff with them. But I hear parents say like, man, it's been really tough being with the kids. And like, I'm like, there's part of me that wonders, am I sick? Like I'm so different than them, I'm very much different than that.
Yeah.
And so is Chana, my wife. But I see it as more of like, it's not that one or the other is wrong. It's just a different breed. Or what do you think?
Yeah, no, you're sick. Yeah.
You don't like being with your kids? Tell me.
No, just kidding. Actually, I really enjoy. One of my favorite things to hear from my 6-year-old now is, "Papa, are you going to cancel your work?"
Wow. Yeah.
Because I do want to cancel my work and I do want to hang out with my kids. They're actually pretty cool. Yes, some days I want to eat them, but most of the time I really enjoy them. They're great people. They're better people at their age than I was, so that makes them a joy to be around. No, actually, I think I would go back to my verbal rule making in the shoulds of the world. Like again, if we could just open ourselves up to a little bit of play, maybe spending time with children wouldn't be so bad. Man, it shouldn't be like this. I should be at work. I should be getting something done. I should be doing my nails. I should, whatever.
Gotta stop shooting on
Verbal,
yourself.
Don't shoot on yourself. Verbal rules. That would be my guess.
But I think there is an aspect that can go too far. I feel myself going too far in the direction of enmeshment, like they're not my peers.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, that can be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know, and I think as homeschoolers, that can be a real big challenge, the enmeshment factor, and missing out on developmental opportunities
for them and me. Like I feel like,
but yes,
Chan and I could be developing more our relationship, our our intellectual relationship. Although I think we do, I do see sometimes a danger of being of missing out on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. I think sometimes for homeschooling folk.
What is? I'm curious. Okay, so two things. One,
yes.
Another thing I remember about a famous Josh Blackburn saying that I
Isms?
actually use is Josh Blackburn-ism is when I have kids, I'm gonna catechise them.
Oh, catechize?
Yeah, catechize. That's what you say.
Catechize.
You say catechize.
Catechisms?
Yeah, you're gonna do some catechizing. Did you catechize your kids?
I've been a little more lackadaisical on that as far as
what? You're not as dogmatic as when you didn't have kids?
no. Children have, yeah, not so much put things in the question. Well, I say this, not a formal catechism, though children I think are really good at setting up the form of the question and answer form. Papa, what is the deal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's sit down. Let's try to explain this.
Yeah.
So I've kind of maybe lent leaned a little bit too much on letting them lead the show sometimes.
Uh-oh. What?
Little mea culpa confession right there.
Well, you said that so much, and it stuck in my head because the word catechize was like kind of a weird word, anyways, and it helped me like in church and stuff. I wanted to be a part. We were part of the catechesis.
Catechesis.
Catechesis for developing our kids for baptism and stuff like that, and I wanted to be a part of that. A lot of it was because of your passion for catechesis.
Well, I'm glad to spread a little passion in the world.
On the other
have I
thing
followed through?
Oh wow,
Yeah.
it's always good to be sort of tempered by life and real life, right? Like when we explore, there are certain limits that we learn. Right?
There are. Yeah, and maybe about the time that I was probably using that language.
Oh yeah, you were also very strong. Oh yeah, you were very strongly reformed back then.
That may have been in the pre-Orthodox days.
Yeah, that was the Presbyterian days, I think. Weren't you Presbyterian?
The Presbo days. Yeah, probably. Yeah, there was a heavy emphasis on catechesis in the Westminster Confession and the Shorter Catechism, and there's some truth that if you teach your children to memorize those things, it gets stuck in their brain.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that probably took me away from that particular form of education is frankly just how formative the liturgy is. There's a different rhythm and a different focus. That's not the word I'm looking for. Style, maybe, within Orthodoxy and how one is formed in the faith. At least for Orthodox children, there's an assumption that you're just Christians, and that starts from day one, at least from the day when you're baptized and chrismated, and you're communing from as long as you can remember. Like you have been in the body of Christ from the get-go. Which creates a bit of I don't know, it's a different culture.
But like the idea of like entering a stream.
Yeah. I mean, I think, with an Orthodoxy, at least for children that grew up Orthodox, there's this notion that you never knew anything else. So there wasn't like a preparation to get into the stream. You've always been in it.
You've just always been interesting.
But you're constantly, if you're going to church, you're constantly being bombarded by the gospel.
And you're also acknowledging it, though, right?
Well, but I think this is true regardless on the theological spectrum. This will be my own existential bent. You've got to own it, right? I mean, you've got to own it.
Yeah.
You can't just rest your laurels on I was baptized or I made a decision. Or my parents are Greek, or we grew up in the South, or whatever. Because Jesus says, "Look, Jews, I can raise some children from the rocks." Just the fact that, oops, I'm ripping things out of the wall. Get excited and move my feet.
Well, it's gone. Well, that reminds me.
I had to plug my laptop back in.
Nice. That reminds me of something. He was like my supervisor. He was like a coach, but he said something really. One time, he was actually talking to somebody else in the group. He just looked them in the eye and said, "I will never take advantage of you. I will never lie to you, and I will never cheat you, because that's the kind of man I want to be, and that's the kind of man I am." And when he said it with such earnest, honesty and genuineness that it really shook me, because I don't know if you remember this about me, but I'm not really I'm kind of a trickster.
Judah Lohi Buddha.
I want to be more like that, especially as I get older. I want to be more of that kind of guy that can just say that with just declare it, and like you're
Yeah.
saying, like an acknowledgement. Because when he said that, and I asked him about it later, and he said kind of what you're talking about. He said, by saying that, I entered the stream of every other man that has committed to that before me. And he said it's like I acknowledged it, and I owned it by saying it, and I try to say it as often as possible. And I was like, man, how helpful that would be if I started doing that more. And so I've tried to do stuff like that more, but I need to do it more,
Yeah, that
honestly.
sounds wise. Yeah, to make those kind of affirmations and
Yeah, affirmation.
keep putting
Yeah.
yourself in there, and holding yourself to that standard. Hmm.
Hmm.
Kind of reminds me of I guess the one that stands out in my mind is Jonathan Edwards' resolutions.
Hmm.
Where throughout great men throughout history have sometimes sat down and written down like, I resolve that I will,
Mm-hmm.
kind of giving themselves strict marching orders, which, it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to end up going with the flow. And yeah,
But because I think you do a good job of this, but I don't know. I want to do a better job of this. It's like meshing the play with the strict orders for myself.
hmm.
Is it something we compartmentalize? Different, we enter different rooms, or is it something we can be both at the same time?
Yeah, I don't think I've mastered that. That's just an idea I keep playing with.
No, I'm not saying give me the answer. I'm saying, what are your thoughts? So like when I mean, this is just something that came to my mind just now. It's not like,
Well, I
I don't
mean,
think anybody knows the answer. Well,
I think the best. Well, I mean, play ultimately shows up in relationships.
hmm,
Um, like even our
hmm,
conversation right now is playful in a
yeah,
way.
yeah,
Um, but resolutions and the people that we want to be. I mean, that's ultimately about behavior.
hmm,
Like what the kinds of words I want to say, the truth, like the validity of the things I say.
hmm,
Do I follow through with the promises I make? Um,
hmm,
those kinds of resolutions, those affirmations about the kind of men that or people we want to be.
yeah,
But yeah, I think sometimes we can confuse just overall rigidity with fidelity. Like I'm
hmm.
being faithful to the truth if I'm just a stick in the mud all the time.
Well, it's easier to do that, right? Like if I'm
Well,
just a stick in
sure.
the mud.
Then I believe I'm getting it right. And I get the extra brownie points. Um,
Yeah, it's hard to play and be faithful to. It's hard to explore and not have rules and still be faithful to
yeah,
rules.
yeah,
And
yeah,
not
yeah.
rules, maybe the rules is the wrong word, but like be faithful to commitments.
Commitments. I mean, or to even just like I think of it like the pursuit of virtues. I mean,
Hmm.
those are all things that are acquired by practice. But even practice, I mean, even play requires a little bit of practice. Like
Yeah, you're right.
I, I I wish that I sang a little bit more at home or danced with my kids. Like, I'll give it an example of play. Like it's not something we've had a chance to do very often, but like randomly on Facebook one day over in Asheville, there was some English country dancing on a Sunday afternoon, and I was like, "Oh man, we got to just go take the kids and do this." And it turned into a fun little weekend thing, like go over to Asheville and eat some good food and go to church on Sunday, and then do some English country dancing in the afternoon with a bunch of old people,
Nice.
because young people don't do English country dancing. But
Huh.
it was delightful. I mean, it was really, you learn something new and sing and dance, and I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm just playing with it anymore. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. Maybe that. And I hope that's part of my pursuit of humility, where I'm just like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I used to think I knew,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, I don't know. Let's just try it.
Let's
You know,
just
as long
try
as
it.
it's
I think that's good.
yeah. I mean,
And
with
get
things like-
better at it. We can get better at it
we can.
without pretending like we know it, right?
Well, and I mean, there's so many things that are fun and playful. I mean, it's not like, hey kids, let's go do a line of cocaine. I mean, or let's go rob a bank together because the family that steals together stays together. There's I don't have to be a stick in the mud.
Right.
I don't have to be. I'm square, but I'm not like really tight square, tight down.
Yeah.
We can find some fun things to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh man.
like go fishing.
Yeah, you were asking me earlier about what is therapeutic mentoring, and like one of the things that I've found, and I've gotten away from it recently, need to get back to it, is one of the best things to do with my guys is go fishing.
Yeah.
Because and things I'll do with my kid, I love doing with my kids. I don't do it enough either, and because it takes patience, it takes work.
Yeah.
It's
time.
it's gross too, man. Like I forget.
It's dirty.
It's very dirty, and sometimes even if we don't catch a fish, the worms stink, man. The worm poop gets under my nails.
Yeah, or I like to use those little power baits that smell like they're fake salmon eggs. Oh yeah, they're nasty.
They're nasty.
Yeah, they're nasty. But even my kids are like, "When are we going fishing?" And I'm like, yeah, when I go get a fishing license." And then I have to look at them and go, "Yeah, I've been saying that for a year now." And all the reels are, the poles are all stuck together downstairs because they got jumbled together. And I think about the same thing. I'm like, oh, all the work I've got to do.
Because there are like intricate steps, even though it's playful. Like you said, there's still work in play.
There is
where we have to like get the license, get the worms. Make sure that I've got a couple from doing that. I've got a couple fishing poles that have been in my back of my car for I think 4 years now. That are like hooked into the upholstery. I'm like, just leave it. I've been saying that for 2 years now.
Hey, by the way, I went back and looked at LinkedIn. You can feel better. It was only 2016.
It was 2016.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Wait,
it's only 4 years. We're doing great.
Are you sure?
Yeah, dude.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, it wasn't like 8 years or 6 years. It was only 4.
Good. 4 years ago. Well, still
3 and some change.
At our age, 4 years. We know 4 years is like 2 kids ago,
It flies by.
Yeah, it does. Well, dude, it's been really good getting to reconnect with you. Speaking of my kids, I got apparently. Have you seen the show Alone? Have you heard of the show Alone?
Is this one of those survival shows?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's something you might get into. I could see you getting into, but it's fascinating. We've gotten really into it. And the new season's out tonight, and they're begging me to come home, sending me texts, come home, I want to watch it. Something we watch together. It's about like my wife said she's never seen so many men cry in her whole life.
Yeah. I saw the first episode or first season.
Okay, yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it because I love watching these guys crack within 3 days. Like, oh, it's scary. But see, I'll be honest with you. That first season, the guy from Georgia that won.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Well, oh yeah, if you haven't seen it, the first season. He was almost silly sometimes. He would sing. Yeah. He was playful with himself.
Yep.
And that flexibility of personality and like watching that was one of the biggest takeaways for me of that season was like, look, this guy didn't win because he was bigger or badder, but he was actually more playful and gentle with himself than the rest of these other people.
Yeah. He was. That's a good point. Is he? Yeah, he was the one who made up the song, right? Like, I forget what it was.
You had all kinds of silly songs, and he would quote poems to himself.
Yeah.
But that was what allowed him to win.
Yeah.
It wasn't because he. I mean, it's because it was his mental state.
Yeah. Yeah, the physical, and that's what was interesting to me is how important, like the fact that it's called Alone is very good. How hard it can be to be alone. Even the people that, they could get through the hunger, they could get through the fear. It was being alone with
Yep.
yourself that was so
Yep.
hard. And I can imagine that would be hard for me too.
Yep.
Well, I gotta get back to my kids, but dude, so I've been having conversations about comedy with Joseph Rhodes, and conversations about, all kinds of deep philosophical self help with Ford Suze,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'd like to continue having a conversation about you about just
Something.
something.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever comes up.
We should do that.
It'd be awesome. And maybe one of these days I'll be out your way.
Well, come on. We'll take care of you.
Come on if you're coming, right?
We'll feed you. You won't go home hungry.
Hey, you're saying that to a guy that hasn't eaten for 3 days.
Wow.
I'm on day 3 of a self-inflicted fast. Well, no, actually, it's not self-inflicted. My wife inflicted it on me. It's not any kind of religious thing. Although I think it's good to remind myself to pray, but especially during this time. But we're in a contest, though, mostly just to see who can go the longest without eating.
Well, may the best woman win.
Hey, dude, I hope she does win. I'm ready to give up. Actually, it's been fascinating. She told me after the first day, she's done this before. So it's kind of like, hey, Judah, man up. You can do it too. And and she's done it before. And she said after the first day, you don't feel hungry. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever. You're just saying that to get yourself through. It's a mental state, right? But it's true. Like right now, I haven't eaten for 3 days. And yeah, when I think of like delicious things, I start to think, ooh, I'd like to have that. But I don't feel like hunger pangs, It's interesting. And she found out yesterday the longest, the world record is like 350 days. A dude went 350 days. A lot of it was like health reasons. He needed to do it and he just kept it going. He would eat lots of vitamins, but he kept it going for, I got to double check, see if that's right. But that seems pretty crazy.
That seems pretty crazy. Almost unbelievable.
Wow. You can look it up. I'm going to double check. But like 40 days, Jesus went 40 days.
Yeah.
Gandhi went 40 days. 40 days seems, it just shows you how little the human body really needs to eat. It's amazing how much of it is excess. Anywho, I gotta go. They're waiting on me. And you
Go
got
watch that
kids
alone.
waiting on you.
We'll
Love you,
catch up
brother.
with you. See you, bro.
It was great catching up with you, man.